Many Naruto fans wanted Naruto to learn the Flying Raijin Jutsu, Minato's signature ability to teleport around to the places he has marked. And obviously this never happens during the series. Now, Naruto learning that jutsu wouldn't be too far off, and it would kinda make sense. After all, it was his dad's jutsu. Well, technically, Tobirama was the one who invented it, but Minato perfected it and was much better at the Flying Raijin and used it much more than Tobirama. But you get the point. Naruto learned the Rasengan, which was a jutsu his dad invented, and also another signature ability of Minato, so learning the Flying Raijin would just make sense, right? But it never happens. And in this video we're going to explain why, both from an in and out of universe perspective. Starting from an out-of-universe perspective, shall we? Now yes, Naruto could have learned the Flying Raijin in a less optimal capacity, meaning Naruto wouldn't be able to use it in fights, but would be able to use it to teleport and just travel around the world more easily, which would still be useful when he became the Hokage, because if he has to travel to other villages and things like that, he can just mark places nearby and just go there instantly. He could also teleport to places with urgency if something bad happens and the Hokage has to take care of things, if the village is being attacked in a particular location. It's not as though Naruto is not fast enough to get to the other side of the village in 0.2 seconds when he is the Hokage, but you get the point. If there's a border in the Land of Fire that's being attacked or something like that, and Naruto has a Flying Raijin mark close by, he can just go there, take care of the problem, come back to the village in a few minutes. So if Naruto learned the jutsu in this capacity, yeah, we wouldn't really see him doing much with it, because it would just be useful for teleportation, and he might as well not even have the jutsu. And yes, we can say that the Flying Raijin probably has tiers of power in which you can use the jutsu. For example, the Hokage guard has to put all their powers together, Genma, Raido, and Iwashi, in order to use the jutsu. So it's a much more complicated jutsu we give credit for, meaning that, yeah, maybe Naruto learns to use the jutsu, but he takes a little time for the jutsu to even activate, so he can't use it in combat. And yeah, sure, that would be fine if Naruto learned it. But if Naruto actually learned to use the Flying Raijin to the extent Minato used it, being able to teleport around the battlefield, spamming the jutsu to no end. For instance, when Minato faced that Stone Village battalion in the Kakashi flashback arc, the Leaf Ninjas tossed kunais in the battlefield, and Minato took care of that in just a second or two. There were so many kunais, he could teleport to all of them, spamming Flying Raijin, killing every single enemy. And that wasn't even Hokage Minato. If Naruto learned the Flying Raijin, things would get out of hand. Because obviously, by the end of the series, Six Paths Naruto is far stronger than Minato ever was in any version of the character. And Naruto didn't have the Flying Raijin jutsu to help him out. Meaning that if Naruto got access to the Flying Raijin in the way Minato had access to it, he would be able to spam that jutsu to no end. And he would essentially become unstoppable and untouchable. If Minato had way less chakra than Naruto could spam the Flying Raijin, imagine what Naruto, the character with the most chakra in the verse, would be able to do with it. Imagine what Naruto would be able to do with it with those thousands of shadow clones he can create to fight against one single opponent, or maybe even to fight against an entire army, because Naruto spreads his shadow clones in the war arc to fight in all fronts. And yeah, the shadow clones can use the Flying Raijin jutsu. Minato uses a shadow clone to slash Obito inside of the barrier, and he sends that clone with a Flying Raijin mark because Minato had marked Obito all those years ago, the night Minato died and Naruto was born, when Minato and Obito fought. So he had the mark all along, and Minato knew the mark would never fade. It faded when Obito became the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails, but it just wouldn't have faded if something so extreme hadn't happened. Which also makes the jutsu kind of OP. The mark never goes away, you can just leave it there, and when you need that mark, you can teleport to it. Exactly what Minato did to Obito there, and if Naruto had access to it, with all those shadow clones and everything, things would just get way too broken. So the first out-of-universe reason as to why Naruto wouldn't learn the Flying Raijin is simply because the character would become way too broken. I mean, there's a reason why Sasuke is not using every single Rinnegan ability at the end of the series. He just used a couple of them because if he used everything, he would just become way too broken. Also, Naruto doesn't even use every single ability he has access to in the end of the series either. He could use the abilities of every single tail beast, and he only uses Magnet style from Shukaku and Magma style from the Four Tails, and yeah, he uses 9 Rasen Shurikens with different flavors, one for each Jinchuriki, but if you compare that to what he could have done with all all those different abilities? It's pretty insane. Also, he barely ever uses his truth-seeking orbs, even though it's the most powerful ninjutsu in the series. If you compare what Naruto did with the truth-seeking orbs to what Madara and Obito did with them when they were the Jinchurikis of the Ten Tails, Naruto is definitely not taking advantage of that jutsu at all. He's using that as a platform for Sasuke to fly on and to block a few attacks like the Sasuke Susanoo arrows, but nothing too major. So if Kishimoto wasn't even using all the abilities the characters had access to begin with, imagine if Naruto had access to the Flying Raijin on top of that. Naruto would become pretty unmanageable as a character for you to build fights around him because he would have no weaknesses essentially. Like even if Naruto got caught off guard or something bad happened, he could just use the Flying Raijin and get out of there. It would be pretty much impossible to put the character in a difficult situation because even though Minato was very powerful, you could still put the character in danger because he wasn't as powerful as Naruto was, even though he had access to Flying Raijin. But if you put the Flying Raijin on Naruto, one of the strongest characters in the verse, it's just not gonna work. Yes, it would look cool. Naruto would have a lot of quote-unquote aura farming moments, but it would simply break the story. Another reason as to why Kishimoto wouldn't want to give the Flying Raijin to Naruto is that it simply doesn't really fit his fighting style. The Flying Raijin is a jutsu that fits characters that are more lean to the talented, prodigy, edgier, I guess you could say, side of things. I'm not saying Naruto lacks talent. Actually, he is extremely talented and he has innate abilities that surpass pretty much anybody else when it comes to chakra reserves and stamina. But Naruto has always been the #1 knucklehead ninja, and he is not extremely elegant when he fights. Naruto as a character has that element of unrefined, charismatic determination that makes him who he is. And if all of a sudden Naruto started to have moments like Minato with a Flying Raijin looking extremely cool, it simply wouldn't fit his fighting style and even the character's aesthetic. And the Flying Raijin jutsu is something that's supposed to be special and belong to only a few people. Now yes, Naruto is a very special character in the Naruto series, but keeping the jutsu contained to Minato and Tobirama later on is a good idea because you don't want everybody to use the jutsu, otherwise it won't feel as special. And yeah, the Hokage guard also has the jutsu, but they can only use when they put their hands together and everything, so it's not something they can use during combat. So that makes sense. Naruto never learning that jutsu contributes for the Flying Raijin's uniqueness. So now let's explore the in-universe reasons as to why Naruto wouldn't learn the Flying Raijin. The first hypothesis is that there wasn't really anybody to teach Naruto that jutsu. And you could say, wait a minute, but the Hokage guard was around. Genma, Raido, and Iwashi could in theory teach Naruto the Flying Raijin. After all, Minato was the one who taught them. And I guess you could say that, but because they never really mastered the jutsu to completion at least, maybe they just wouldn't be able to teach Naruto the Flying Raijin the way Minato used to use it. Also, those three characters knowing the Flying Raijin is an obvious retcon because Kishimoto needed to take Mei to the location of the 5 Kage versus Madara fight, and the only feasible way to do that quickly enough was to teleport Mei, so he was just like, yeah, they can use a Flying Raijin, just take her there. Regardless, it's likely they wouldn't be able to teach Naruto the jutsu because they are not as proficient as Minato used to be with it. I guess you could say that maybe if they taught Naruto the jutsu in that inferior version, Naruto would be able to use it with 2 other clones and then produce the jutsu like Genma, Iwashi, and Raido do together. But it's likely that you have to combine the powers of 3 different people to use the Flying Raijin in that situation, so Naruto using clones for it wouldn't really work. And anyway, if Naruto learned the jutsu that way, he wouldn't be able to use it in combat, just like the Hokage guard couldn't, and it would just be a jutsu for transportation essentially. Could be useful, but then again, it's not Naruto's priority. He had to learn more powerful stuff to become stronger in battle, like Sage Mode, KCM, and the Rasen Shuriken, for example. Things he learned in Naruto Shippuden, which is the time Naruto would learn the jutsu, because I don't see him learning this type of ability during Naruto Part 1. I mean, it doesn't make sense because Naruto wouldn't be strong enough and experienced enough with chakra control and everything, but also because Naruto, as a kid, would just be way too broken with the Flying Raijin, just like he would have been in Naruto Shippuden, to be fair, but yeah. And you may say that Naruto wouldn't have to learn the jutsu from the Hokage guard and that he could learn from a scroll, just like he learned the Shadow Clone Jutsu back in Chapter 1 of the series by stealing the Shadow Clone Jutsu scroll. Maybe in this situation, he wouldn't have to steal the scroll, like Tsunade could just give it to him and say, you know, you should learn this jutsu, Naruto, I think it would fit you very well. But this is where the real problem lies, because the Flying Raijin is not, like the Shadow Clone Jutsu, for example. Yes, the Shadow Clone Jutsu is a difficult and also dangerous jutsu for you to use, especially if you don't have a massive chakra reserve. The Shadow Clone Jutsu is a B rank jutsu. The multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu, which is when essentially you just make more Shadow Clones, is an A rank jutsu. However, the Flying Raijin is an S rank jutsu, the highest possible rank. The difference between A rank to S rank is the difference between a regular Rasengan to a wind-style Rasen Shuriken, so it's a massive gap. We also know how much more difficult it is to learn an S rank jutsu by Naruto's training of the Rasen Shuriken compared to his training with the Rasengan. Yes, Naruto took some time to learn the Rasengan, and about the same time I would say to learn the Rasen Shuriken, about a month or so. But when Naruto was learning the Rasen Shuriken, he was using an army of clones to essentially increase the time of his training. So in practice, Naruto took hundreds of times more training hours to master the Rasen Shuriken than to master the Rasengan. The time it takes for you to learn the Rasen Shuriken, and therefore an S-rank jutsu, is exponentially higher, simply because it's so much more complicated and difficult for you to master. And the same thing would apply to the Flying Raijin jutsu, which is S-rank. I mean, Kiba mastered the Shadow Clone jutsu. It wasn't the multi-Shadow Clone jutsu, but he could use the regular Shadow Clone. It's very likely that several ninjas from the Leaf Village could use the regular Shadow Clone jutsu. Not the multi-Shadow Clone jutsu, that's something much more Naruto-esque because of the chakra reserve thing. But because someone like Kiba could master the regular Shadow Clone, it's not gonna be the most difficult thing for you to learn. Also, many characters master the Rasengan, the base Rasengan that is. Kakashi copied it with his Sharingan, which he states the first time he used it in Naruto's Rasen Shuriken training. Konohamaru learned the Rasengan from Naruto as a 12-year-old. Naruto also as a 12-year-old learned the Rasengan, but only Naruto could use the Rasen Shuriken. He was the only one to develop it. Now the point I'm trying to get to here is that if the Flying Raijin was easy to master, many more people would have done so because it's an extremely powerful and useful jutsu. The only people who can use the Flying Raijin are Minato Namikaze, Tobirama Senju, the one who invented it, and the Hokage guard, but they have a massive limitation to the jutsu. And it's probably impossible for those three guys to learn the jutsu in its completion, except for Genma, because Genma's based. But then you may say, well, yeah, obviously it's very difficult to learn that jutsu, Daigo, but Naruto learned an S-rank jutsu, and he did so by using the Shadow Clone Army method to increase his time of training, so he could just do the same thing with a Flying Raijin jutsu. And yeah, that's a very powerful training method that only Naruto can do because he has the ability to use an army of Shadow Clones and keep them sustained for a long time because of his chakra reserves. However, the Flying Raijin is a very different jutsu from the Rasen Shuriken. And yeah, that's kind of obvious, but my point here is that Naruto brute force his way to the Rasen Shuriken. He simply trained and trained and trained until he was exhausted and until the jutsu finally performed. But what if the Flying Raijin is simply not like that? It's a jutsu where you have to create this mark where it's essentially like rune-like structures of chakra that attach to something else, and then you teleport to that thing. It just feels like the level of complexity to that jutsu is superior to the Rasen Shuriken. When it comes to raw power and destructive potential, obviously the Rasen Shuriken is going to topple the Flying Raijin, because the Flying Raijin is not a damage dealing skill, but it's also not as chakra demanding, which means that the S rank from that jutsu comes from somewhere else, which is definitely its complexity and how hard it is to produce and learn the jutsu to begin with. Naruto managed to learn the Rasen Shuriken using the Shadow Clone Army method because he simply had to get used to that type of Rasengan, something he could already do in base, but now he had to infuse wind style into it. It's something that would take time, but as I said, he just brute force his way through it. But it's something much more physical, so to speak. It's like learning how to ride a bike, for example. Even if you have no talent for it, if you do it enough, eventually you are going to be able to ride a bike. If you brute force your way through it, just like Naruto did, yeah, eventually you will. It may take a long time, but you will learn it. However, if you don't have the knack for it, it doesn't matter how much time you spend spend on trying to learn quantum physics, you are never going to get it. And it's a similar situation with a Flying Raijin here. Its level of complexity, it's something you can't simply brute force your way through just sheer training. So even if Naruto used the Shadow Clone Army method, it just wouldn't work. And let's be real here, Naruto has never been a book-smart person. He's very clever during fights. People really underestimate how good Naruto's battle IQ is, but when it comes to theoretical stuff, reading books, understanding concepts, he's terrible at that. And the Flying Raijin very much strikes me as a jutsu that would demand a lot of it for you to master it, which means Naruto simply wouldn't be able to learn it. And that's why he never does. Watch this other video right here for more cool Naruto content. Definitely leave a like in the video, subscribe if you haven't, and please ring notifications. Those 3 things are very helpful and they take 2 seconds, so please do it right now. And thank you so much for watching.